Hello, beautiful people. I am back. We are reading Between the World and Me. We are picking up at page 25 in the text. So at this point, Coates is the part that we skipped. He spent some time talking about the streets of Baltimore where he grew up and the violence that he saw and how he saw that it was motivated by fear, that people were being violent out of self-protection. So now we're going to continue our discussion of education by thinking about how that idea, the violence and the fear that he saw in the streets, connects to what he saw in the schools. Pay really close attention to his message about what schools do. So he starts off right here. The streets were not my only problem. If the streets shackled my right leg, the schools shackled my left. Fail to comprehend the streets, and you gave up your body now. But fail to comprehend the schools, and you gave up your body later. So the first thing I notice is he's back to talking about bodies again. And we talked about earlier how he brings that up in the first section when he's thinking about police violence. So right here, when he says, fail to comprehend the streets, and you gave up your body now. What that makes me think is that he's talking about if you fail to follow the rules of the streets, you give up your body or get killed. But this really sticks out to me. But fail to comprehend the schools, and you gave up your body later. So right here, this juxtaposition, putting these two things together, the streets and the schools, he's making us think about how they are both forms of oppression. And they're both ways that you can lose your life. I'm really curious about that idea, so I'm going to keep reading. I suffered at the hands of both, but I resent the schools more. There was nothing sanctified about the laws of the streets. The laws were amoral and practical. You rolled with a posse to the party as sure as you wore boots in the snow or raised an umbrella in the rain. These rules aimed at something obvious, the great danger that haunted every visit to Shake and Bake, every bus ride downtown. So the laws of the streets he's talking about. He's talking about how the laws of the streets are designed to keep you alive, it seems like. They're not supposed to be right or wrong, but you have to follow them. You have to make sure that you're protected, as sure as you wore boots in the snow or raised an umbrella in the rain. There's nothing moral. There's nothing right or wrong there. It's just what you do to protect yourself. Now let's see how he juxtaposes the laws of the schools with the laws of the streets. But the laws of the schools were aimed at something distant and vague. What did it mean to, as our elders told us, grow up and be somebody? And what precisely did this have to do with an education rendered as rote discipline? To be educated in my Baltimore mostly meant always packing an extra number 2 pencil and working quietly. Educated kids walked in single file on the right side of the hallway, raised their hands to use the lavatory, and carried the lavatory pass when en route. Educated children never offered excuses, certainly not childhood itself. The world had no time for the childhoods of black boys and girls. How could the schools, algebra, biology, and English, were not subjects so much as opportunities to better discipline the body, to practice writing between the lines, copying the directions legibly, memorizing theorems extracted from the world they were created to represent. Let's pause right here. So this really sticks out to me because this is not what I think of as education. To be educated, in my opinion, is to be somebody who questions the world around them, to be somebody who's well-read, to be somebody who has a large breadth of knowledge. Here, what Coates is talking about sounds like following rules. So when I go back And I think of what he's saying, an education rendered as rote discipline. That to me sounds like all education was following these rules. And now I'm really, really wondering what that connection is with race. Educated children never offered excuses, certainly not childhood itself. The world had no time for childhoods of black and boys and girls. How could the schools? So, right here, I'm immediately starting to think of connections to what Woodson was saying in The Miseducation of the Negro about how in Woodson's time, which was a little bit further back than this, black people were educated to exist in the white world. But this was a time for black people to learn these particular skills, this algebra, biology, English. They're not subjects to be studied so much as opportunities to better discipline the body, to practice writing between the lines, copying the directions legibly, memorizing theorems extracted from the world they were created to represent. That to me all sounds like following rules, and it's making me think of all of the rules that you are taught to follow in order to exist in a racist world. Let's keep going and see what we can get here. All of it felt so distant to me. I remember sitting in my 7th grade French class and not having any idea why I was there. I did not know any French people, and nothing around me suggested I ever would. France was a rock rotating in another galaxy, around another sun, in another sky I would never cross. Why precisely was I sitting in this classroom? The question was never answered. I was a curious boy, but schools were not concerned with curiosity. They were concerned with compliance. I loved a few of my teachers, but I cannot say that I truly believed any of them. Some years after I'd left school, after I'd dropped out of college, I heard a few lines from Nas that struck me. Ecstasy, coke, you say it's love, it is poison. Schools where I learned they should be burned, it is poison. I'm going to pause right here. These lines that he's citing, talking about how this is poison. This word poison keeps coming up here. And this is making me think back to a lot of what Coates was saying about race. And it sounds like a lot of his ideas are that this world, this racist world, is constructed on some kind of lie, and that it is poison to people's minds. I am going to stop here, and what you are going to do now is you are going to continue reading through the top of page 36. So just to finish the sentence from page 35, cuts off right here. We are all our beautiful bodies, and so must never be prostrate before the barbarians, must never submit our original self, our one of one, to defiling and plunder. In order to do that, you are going to go back into Canvas. Obviously there's no play pause here because I'm making it now. Click the next assignment. And this should look familiar. You are going to click on the link to get your guiding question sheet. The text is right here once again with your instructions. Click your link, make a copy and rename it. You will have about 17 minutes to read independently. Then you will work with a partner to answer your questions, finding details in the text. Go ahead and go.